So today I'm doing a Star Trek themed painting, which is something I've always wanted to do for my live stream. This is a Starfleet starship of my own design, reminiscent of a lot of the design elements you've seen in other Star Trek ships throughout the ages. I kind of like this idea of putting together different elements that you might have seen from maybe the shows back in the 1960s all the way through the ones from today. And I'm working on a canvas that's about 16 by 20 inches. I pre-painted it in kind of a cool gray color, so it's not just the straight, stark white canvas in the background. And as you can see here, I'm putting in the drawing with a colored pencil just to sort of get an idea of where I wanted the basic shapes to be. And this would, of course, then become the painting itself. Um, this live stream was done approximately around May of 2020, just at the beginning of the pandemic, and was one of the first ones that I actually did. Although for today's painting, I'm going to be doing the painting in acrylics. I typically use the Liquitex heavy body acrylics for my paintings, then down as necessary for the backgrounds and the details. In the description below, you'll see a listing of the colors that I used, although this particular painting was pretty limited in the color palette. It's primarily blues with a few touches of reds, yellows, and I believe it's a burnt umber for some of the details. I've got a muddy gray color here, and I'm just going to kind of get into some of the detail spots that I called out. And I'm imagining that there's going to be some on the side of this warp drive, some into the middle of this front navigational deflector area, because all Star Trek ships have navigational deflectors. This is very important. And I hope I'm not going to get my head right in the way again. Here we go. All right. Not going to worry about covering up the actual disc itself. There's going to be like a little traditional dish in the middle there, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to come in and paint that later. Just want to kind of get some shapes in, some lines here that I know I can use as reference later in case I paint over things. There we go. It's looking almost black on the screen right now, but that's more a function of the way the light is in the room is getting affected by the camera itself. It's not that dark. When we come in and do a nice space background, this will have a little bit of a nice effect to it. At least I'm hoping that it does. I'm counting on that to be the case. Alrighty. Got some foreground mountains over here, got the backgrounds. This planet has no atmosphere, so I'm not going to worry about atmospheric perspective on this. I know it's a little difficult to see at this point, but we will make it work. Alrighty. Well, I did forget that I've got the planet up above, so before I clean off the brush, let's get in the back side of this planet here. And while I'm doing it, I'm just gonna come in here and brush in the rest of our planet. And as you can see, I'm not really worried about it being perfectly round, because we're gonna come in and background paint this a bit. Although while I'm at it, the one thing I will pay attention to is this transition zone between the dark side of the planet and the light side, because you mess that up, you will mess up the whole illusion. So I pulled in some of the gray that I'd previously used just to get this nice little, just to fuzz this up a bit, as this planet will act to help us define. It's got a little bit of a glare on it right now. When someone looks at it, this is going to openly tell people, hey, that's exactly where the light's coming in. So it will help us with the illusions. And we'll give that some detail at a later point. But right now, I want to get some, here we go. And I'm just kind of blobbing this in. I'm just not. I mean, this isn't drafting here. This is just let's get the feel in for this planet surface. Yeah, let's come over here before I tackle the crater. I get this guy here. This thing, which is sort of a picked up some of the paint. That's all right. There are no accidents. I'm going with that. I'm going with a design here that I've come back to a few times, at least similar. It's the design language from the Star Trek shows, of course, but it kind of pulls some of the elements together that I've always liked, without it just kind of being flat and discs and things. What I want to do with this tone here is to, there we go, start getting some life to these other edges of the ship that I haven't yet put anything down on. I think I mixed up enough paint where I can work these colors as we go. Give some 3D-ness to the rest of it. As you can see here, I just went over these black lines that I left on here. If you don't want them, you can cover them completely, and if you still want to keep them, you can kind of come back over and just remove some of the wet paint before it dries too far. But usually you can still see straight through them, so I like to use them as reference. I gotta kind of see what now I'm gonna have to start making some decisions about what I'm gonna do in here with all of this stuff. I think I want to carve this up to the top there. I've made this gap in the front of the ship's hull so huge, but I'm imagining it not being that deep. There's actually going to be a point where there's going to actually be some things going on inside of it. Our incredibly important and very powerful navigational deflector paving the way in front of us as we travel at high speeds throughout the galaxy. We don't want to get obliterated by bits of dust, small asteroids, and so forth. All right. Gonna get some detail, just a hint of detail in the shadow zone of this mountain here, or this cliff rock thing. And I'm just gonna kind of be abstract with this, just let myself think of, well, it's, rocky shape. So, and since it's a nice rounded brush, these filberts are really great. It gives you some really fun shapes. I often do clouds with these, but since it's a rock, I'm just gonna kind of give it some life. All right. And just grabbing a big brush, I'm going with a big flat brush this time. I just want to get some of this, want to get some darker color. We're gonna get the space background in here. And this part's truly satisfying, because all you really want to do is get in and just cover it. Oop. This is where you can see where it's, I'm using this thicker variety of acrylic paint, and sometimes it just doesn't want to go down the way you could totally want to, but that's all right. We'll just work it. And as I get closer to the ship itself, I will step back a bit. So I don't want to, I'm in kind of this mode of throwing paint. I don't want to throw it all over the ship. We'll get into the being careful part later. I'm going to try to get close to the top of the sauce there, just basically freehanding it. I mean, if you really want to be technical, you can treat this like a drafting project and mask off your areas, but we just want to capture the essence of what we're doing here. I got my hand a little thin there. That I was doing. It's not an exact science. No, it is not an exact science. There's definitely a lot of, it's very fuzzy science. Although it's funny, I had probably one of the most difficult classes I considered in that program was color theory, because it's just so strange, and I was frustrated with it. I was just it was a lot of painting squares, painting color charts, and I thought, you know, I'm going to be so happy when this is done. I can just get on to doing some design work. But in all honesty, out of all the classes I took, that's the one that I retained the most information from. I had a very good color theory teacher, and I found that I retained a lot of basics out of it, maybe more than I would have thought. And to this day, I'm remembering bits and pieces that we learned in class from that, and it just stuck with me. And this is a little darker than the color that I used, and I did darken it with a little bit of the gray that I had before. Oh, you know what? Now that I have it here, that's another area I've got to lighten up. Bring my nacelle back. There we go. Top of my nacelle there. Top of that nacelle is there. And what I'm trying to do is add some extra tones in here. So we can start getting these shapes better defined. So invariably, you're going to have shadows and details. And every time you get to a new level of the gray tones and the shadows, you have an opportunity for helping to define the shape. See how we're doing here. Okay. And I'm going to get the edges just a little bit. You'll see it's going to be brighter than anything on the page already. And I know if I could zoom in right now, I would, but I'm just going to let it do its thing and call out some of the highlights of these cliffs here. Cliffs, mountain edges. And it's just a little touch of yellow gives it a little bit of warmth, and it's going to really help it pop off this blue-toned background here. And this is where we kind of start getting into the color theory part of it. When you have this many blues, anything that's in the yellow-orange range is going to just completely jump off the page. And I've tried to be pretty subtle with it, because if you're not too careful, it'll take over the whole painting. And really the foreground is just sort of to support the ship in this painting. It's not supposed to be the main hero subject. There we go. Yeah. Want to make sure that just make it feel like whatever sun is in this star system, it's not a blue sun. We just happen to be on a planet surface that is pretty far away, thus it's mostly ice and things. Yeah, this will start bringing it out. There we go. So we can actually get this. We're going to do some fun details inside of these warp engines here, not too long, once I let the rest of this dry up a little bit, so I'm not fighting with the blue paints that are on here. We're going to get some nice warm details in, because, you know, Federation ships are full of glowy bits. You gotta be real careful on anything that looks like a circle or an ellipse. So I'm trying to be really careful here. Maybe this will be a good chance for me to... There we go. Alrighty. There, I lightened it up some, gave it a little bit of a nice color tone there. Honestly, a lot of these things, I'm making a lot of decisions as I go, and I'm not sure if they're going to work, so I'm kind of sometimes backtracking a little bit. So even little things like choosing the brushes and the details and such. I didn't practice this. We're free-forming this as we go. So I grabbed a little round brush. I think this will be better for what I'm trying to do. We're going to do one main dome in here. In each of these engines. This will be like the Sard collector. These are the glowy bits on the front of your standard Star Trek ship. We've got to have little glowy bits of things made with mysterious materials that are metallic but allow a lot of light through it. Just giant glitter balls. And we're going to do a second one. I kind of like the 3 glowy bit thing they were doing in the Discovery era, so we're going to do that here. We're going to do the 3 glowy bits from the Discovery era ones on here. Yes, for those of you that know John Eves, just say, yeah, I stole a lot of his ideas and did a stream with his designs, and he can go back and chase me down later. I kid. John Eves, good guy. Hoping everyone can get back to Wonderfest and we can all laugh about this later. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing in the middle here, although I want something that's a little bit more retro, so I am actually going to just put in a round shape, and I'm just going to do it in white for now. We're going to pick an actual coppery color for it later, but I kind of want this classic coppery radar dish looking thing on the front, and I'm just going to get in, since I already have a dark color in there, I just want a lighter color over it. Again, since you can see right now, though, a lot of this acrylic paint is semi-transparent, semi-translucent. So this will just give me a nice backing for it. I'm not going to worry about adding too much detail with this. In my mind, though, I'm envisioning that this is a convex thing, so the actual center will be offset from what we're looking at for it. But I just want some shapes I can work with. And I'm going to get a little smaller one there. This will be a chance for us to put some mechanisms in. Alrighty. Go figure. Oh boy. I'm trying to just get it to be the consistency of like an ink so I can actually get in here and paint up some shapes. Like ideally this would be thin like an ink. I've considered switching out the type of acrylic paint that I use. I mean, they make so many varieties that you can kind of buy any flavor, if you will, of paint, thick, thin, what have you. I've been using this kind for so long, I'm reasonably familiar with it, even if sometimes it doesn't do what I like it to. So it's just been part of the toolkit. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be a phaser stripe here. This might actually be a recessed row of windows across the bottom of the saucer. I might go with that, because it's just different enough that it could be fun. You can really get, even if it's a pretty thick round brush that I'm using, but depending on how you get your paint on it, you can get some pretty good lines. Alright, so we have a leading edge of this arm here. So I'm gonna go nuts just with mixing paint here. Bear with me. That's what I can put on. It's like watching paint dry. It'd be like my subscript for the stream. Becomes. I've got a dark. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for fun details on this, and now that I have the black, so these ships are huge, so they need to have a lot of little surface bits to them. So I'm just going to use this brush like I would a pen and start adding things that I would expect maybe to see, and eventually we will get to things like windows. But now I want to get in some shapes and forms, and I haven't quite decided what I want to do to the inside of this engine yet, so I'm going to leave that part alone. But make it look like it's got some kind of cowl going on there. And what I said earlier at the beginning of the stream, I kind of wanted to do this as if... That's kind of my own take on one of these ships. I'm just going to detail it as I want to. So... Is that showing up? As they say, big bold moves. I shouldn't be concerned. The problem is I'm getting to the front of this ship, and there's a lot of things that I know I want to do there, and I just don't. I don't want to screw it up. Alrighty. And the edges of these saucers, the tricky part is I don't really have a ruler for this, so you just got to kind of take your best guess and give it a pinstripe. There we go. Just freehanding that as best I can and hoping for the best. Front of it would be about there. Maybe some bits over here, some bits over here. I like the idea of kind of quadranting the thing off so you have some idea of edges going on, some details on the edges. And again, I'm only working in my darker color now, so that there's an opportunity to come back in and do a few others, but I want to get the things in I know that are going to be important and sort of like that paint was too thin to do that. Oh well, we'll make that work. And I don't really know what I'm painting in here. I'm just adding some little bits of detail that will hopefully show up at the final bit. Give it a sense of scale. Plus, every one of these that I'm painting in this dark gray black will be an opportunity to add a different color detail later. Alright, done with that color. I've got this sort of dark blue here. And what I want to do is get in a straight here to here. A little too much, a little too harsh. That might be a little bit too harsh, a little too blue, but we're gonna go with it. That'll help define the neck a little bit more. There we go. Kind of digging where that's going. Feather that down a bit so I can darken the neck up just a bit. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't really happy with that blue, so I'm just going to feather that out a bit. And it'll just darken up the rim under here. That's okay. I quite like it as a piece there. Still not entirely happy with that. But I kind of wanted to darken it up onto that side anyway, so maybe I'll just work that in. Wasn't quite as happy with that. That's alright. Alrighty. Unfortunately, at this point of the stream, I'd lost the music because it was licensed. So I will just go ahead and narrate what's going on over the top of this. At this point, I was just starting to get into detailing the Starship model itself. And I was mixing up a couple of different colors that would fill in some of the white spaces that I'd left for the nacelles and the navigational deflector. Most of this involved mixing some yellows and the raw umber that I had chosen as kind of the brown detail. And as you can see here, I'm starting to just kind of testing the brush and going into the navigational deflector itself. In the old time Star Trek shows, these were copper-looking radar dishes, basically. So I wanted to kind of get in the shadow details and maybe a little hint of some rings on the inside. I left the light side, which can act as a highlight. These are basically little recessed flat objects. And now I'm coming in on the two on the side. I'm repeating the 3-item pattern that was occurring in the nacelles, and instead of just one deflector dish in the front of the ship, I wanted to add a couple of smaller ones to the left and the right. This helped make it a little bit different from some of the other Star Trek ships that we've seen in the past. And it kind of bridges the technology eras from the older 1960s era designs with some of the ones we've seen in the next gen and later on. I like the idea of there being sort of actual hardware there instead of it just kind of being a glowing mass of something. So maybe there's like grid work going on behind the scenes in this, holding up these dishes and things. It's a gigantic ship. It's a little like working jazz, but in paint. Alrighty. So this starship's going to be just a little different. We are actually going to have some extra details that don't normally appear on Star Trek ships. Pieces. Again, just pushing and pulling with blues at this point. Adding in some things that will help support the shape itself, support the geometry that I've put together here. There we go. I mean, these are radial patterns, and if you're not too careful, you could blow the whole illusion, because it's going to change from every aspect here. So I'm trying to follow the center line and try to give some indication of detailing here. Every little bit helps. But now I'm getting into a part where it's almost as bright as that, so here we go. And this is a bit like doing stars. For those of you that have seen some of my other ones, the stars are just kind of thrown in with some white. This time, the windows are going to help us set some scale. And hopefully I don't blotch it and end up with a gigantic window. But this is a lot like trying to paint a building. These are cities, almost. I don't know if you guys can see those very well. There, yes, happy little windows. Yes, we're going to have some happy little windows in here. And right now I'm just putting them in with white, although it would be nice to get some that have different colors, but yes. And for all the folks that are working in the engineering section down below, I'm imagining this is where all the sewage treatment is. Give them some windows, because they are essential services, and we want them to be happy and being able to look out the window and see what's going on. There we go. Yes, indeed. Now let's go ahead and get some in here on the... So, again, I was imagining this to be a bit of a window chase, this bit here in the middle. So we are going to add a couple of levels worth of windows. This is a huge ship. If the scale of these windows is any indication. But I don't have any trouble with that. I think sometimes spacecraft and shows... Oh, red photon torpedo. You got it, Stuart. I will put in... I haven't even opened the red yet. We've got some reds to do, but yes, I agree. Alrighty. And they're not just on the window chaser. We're going to have some in the actual hull itself. Does it have a brewery? It does. It's not where the warp drive is. Do not get me started on the freaking brewery. What the hell were they thinking? Like, no one looked at JJ and said, "Are you stupid? Come on." This, folks, is why Christopher Dahl isn't working in the movies, because I'd be looking at some of these going, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. For God's sakes, who put you in charge? Put a fucking brewery into the Starship." Oh, sorry, bad language. Yeah. Which, by the way, I mean, let's be serious. Having a brewery like that on the ship? 100%. I think every Starship should come with its own brewery and distillery and a hydroponic garden growing some of the best chronic this side of the Klingon Empire. I mean, 5-year mission stuck with these people? Are you kidding me? Oh my god. But really, let's not build a futuristic looking set or do even a 3D set to showcase the fabulous technology of the 23rd century that can take us from here to all these different planets in ridiculously short periods of time. No, let's just go film at the Anheuser-Busch distillery and we'll make that work for people. So now we're going to get some edge windows here. Yes. Chris, you're not allowed to design Star Trek ships for the Star Trek shows because you don't play nice with the people that are in charge when they come to you with stupid ideas. Oh my god, this is the Imperial March, isn't it? Holy crap. I'm sitting here thinking this is the Family Guy episode where they were in the elevator on the Death Star and they had the elevator music for this. Thank you, David. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of little things that transform a somewhat questionable design into something that could be a lot of fun. So now that I got the lighter windows, clear off the brush a bit. Later side, we're gonna have some darker windows, so need those in there as well. Same thing with the highlight side of this saucer here is going to have a few darker windows. There we go. There we go. And on the Bassards, just kind of work in some just trying to orange in the edges of these things to give them a little depth, make them look a little bit more glowy. There we go. And for the torpedo tubes, I'm kind of thinking that you're going to need to be in the middle here. And I'm going to have to do the same thing I did with the with these Bassards. I'm going to have to put them in as white. So we're going to do one here. One here. They're going to be double stacked. So we're going to put two of them in there. Maybe one more. Although that means it would be firing across its saucer there, knocking off its whatever this thing is on the top. So we'll just we'll add another one down at the bottom here. Let those go for just a bit. All right. Now this is another fun one. Grabbing some of this red here, and if I went straight cadmium medium red, it would really look absolutely horrible on this hull. So I'm adding a little touch of raw sienna to it, which is going to gray down the red just a little bit, or knock it off, orange it up basically. It's not going to be such a bright red that it's going to be ridiculous. There we go, dirtying it up. That's the word I was looking for. Dirtying the red up. We want a good dirty red. And the reason we want this is that on most of these ships, there are call banners and Federation symbology. And so we're going to add some red stripies. And there's going to be it's like adding warning signs all over your, or you know, the no step signs on your airplanes. We're going to have little bits of red markings on here. All of this comes together to basically say, yep, Star Trek ship, for sure. There we go. Boink. So let's see, that should be pretty close. Yep. Double stack torpedo tubes. Yes. We got an over and under design. Shooting Klingons like shooting skeet back home. So I'm going to go over with a little bit of yellow to give it that core. And then grab my red and just kind of come in while it's still a little wet. And what happens is you get this nice little orange glow. There we go. And that works so nicely that you can kind of do the same thing with your running lights. There we go. So give them a little character. Give them a little... Now these start looking like they could be, yeah, the aircraft hazard lights you'd expect by an airport. So I'm actually going to use a piece of, very expensive paper towel. And we're going to put that over our ship because I don't want to get this, I don't necessarily want to get this on the ship itself. No, I might need a little more water than that. Thank you, sir. All right. I am going to stand for this one. So I've thinned down the paint, and I've got it on. I've got white paint on the end of this brush, and you just kind of throw it, and it will go everywhere, and it'll splatter. This one's a little thicker than usual, so my splatters are actually coming up kind of thick. Like that one. But it's actually kind of fun, and it really makes you feel like, you know, you're kind of playing in the... There we go. You actually can have some control over it, but until I actually do a run of it, I want to see what the paint's doing. You didn't think I painted stars in by hand, did you? But I always do sort of some hero stars, although I've got some good size ones on here with this, so that's not too shabby. But I always do kind of add my own, because there's definitely some spaces in here that could use their own stars. Stars upon ours. So I grab a little round brush here, and I might do some up here. And they end up being larger, of course, naturally. A lot of the stars that you just saw me put down will... they'll fade a little bit because they're kind of thinned down. Oh, yeah. This is your first time here, though. I actually do put in some main ones. These ones right here will probably stick around, but a lot of the smaller ones, sorry, I didn't mean to yell. A lot of the smaller ones will fade into the background a bit. Yikes. He doesn't know his own microphone's distance. But yeah, I like to give a few... and get a few closer to the ship itself, too. There we go. Well, that was a mistake. There we are. Alrighty. Then I'm just going to go ahead and come down here and do the old seed all. Thank you. And there we have it. One Star Trek styled spaceship. The full reveal. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and you'll be notified when I upload a new video. Also, catch my weekly stream over on Twitch every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Thank you.